Hey guys, today I have with me one of the panelists of our upcoming panel on increasing the effectiveness of the voluntary carbon markets. It's Dr. Dale Rickert from Greentech Festival. He's global head of product there, and I'm gonna let him introduce himself, talk a little bit how the festival has started and where they are today, and what sets them aside from other events of that kind. Hi, Dale.
Great. Thanks, Talia, and lovely to meet you and see you here. Pleasure to be here, everybody. Yeah, so the Greentech Festival, we're a festival designed really to try to get people and business behind the idea of fighting climate change actively. And we don't want to just be, there are many events out there that already have that message around the urgency, but we also want to create positivity as well. So our real belief is that the business should be leading change in sustainability, and the technology has a key role to play. So with this, we've built up a festival series. It's co-founded by the Formula One world champion Nico Rosberg, as well as Marco Voigt and Sven Kruger. And yeah, so we have a festival running. We have events all over the earth. So we have Los Angeles, London, Singapore, Berlin, New York. And we're just about in 1 month's time, we have our big event taking place in Berlin. And it's really something worth experiencing because we want to make the engagement around sustainability fun and engaging. So we have, people have the chance to come and try sustainable foods, to try on sustainable fashion, to dance under the stars to a sustainable DJ at our Green Beats Festival, or try out, a fast Audi e-tron GT going full speed down the runway to experience electromobility for the first time potentially. So I guess that's the key thing. We want it to be engaging, fun, but also take on the serious side of change as well. So we have a conference program with stage programs, everyone from Extinction Rebellion and That's a Generation, through to people in big business. Politicians are there to discuss how we can move forward, really as one community.
Gotcha. I saw that you guys have basically a huge number of exhibitors for each of the events, and I'm sure there are some very maybe curious examples that you could tell us about. Do you have one that immediately comes to mind?
Well, yeah, actually, there'll probably be a couple. Some of them are around new business models. So over the last few years, we've been working with a fantastic designer and architect called Antje Parsons, and she's got this fantastic project called Urban Beta. And the idea is that she wanted to find a way to make buildings sustainable. So she built almost like Lego pieces houses that were made out of wood, so they're carbon negative. And what you can do is you can actually, say if you're a big family, you can not buy, but you rent or hire your house, and the people come and they build it, they put it together, it can be put together.
Okay.
We've actually had complete event spaces built for us in a week before. So you build this thing up like a piece of a jigsaw puzzle. You can use it as a house. And for example, say in 10 years, your kids grow up and they move to another city, you can actually take the house in half. You can downsize your house and send half off with your children to the other city, and they can build their own little
Oh
house.
my God.
For example. And you can even trade the carbon credits on the markets if you have that, if you own that wood for that time. So then you can resell it at the end. You can give it back to the company, and they have it then as I guess a material bank. So that's an example of one of the really cool companies that we're working with.
Talk about carbon neutral mobility, right?
Or negative housing,
Exactly,
carbon negative.
negative even.
I know for me, it's a company that ticks all the boxes. Also, because it's modular, it's flexible. You can, and that's why we've used it for our own event spaces in the past, because it really creates this, incredible vibe. And you can talk to people about, hey, it wasn't there a week ago, and it won't be there in a week's time, but it's an incredible structure right now, and it's all made of wood, and it's carbon
And it's
negative, actually.
sustainable. Yeah, that's an awesome example. I think that's is giving me like the feel for what happens at the festival, and now I'm getting excited to even go myself. Anybody else that comes to mind? Maybe like you mentioned business models
Yeah.
or things of that
Well,
nature.
actually, do you know what? Probably for this year's festival, so it's taking place from the 14th to the 16th of June at Berlin Tegel Airport. So it's an incredible space. We're in the big Lufthansa hangar. So yeah, the key thing for me, we've managed to get the renowned climate scientist Professor Johann Rotstrom, to our event. He's giving the opening keynote, and he's sitting down on a panel with Kate Brandt, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer from Google. And I'm just so excited to have, firstly, of course, Rockstrom's being out in the media all the time saying we're 32 years, we're 30 years too late. We have to hit this hard now and have a complete change in our way of living. And I think that having that urgency at the opening of our festival, but then also getting a chance to have really one of the world's most renowned sustainability leaders. She was, Kate Brandt came as sustainability manager #1 on the yearly kind of ticker for who the best sustainability managers globally. Johan Rostrom as Time Person of the Year for his sustainability work. I think this conversation between business and science is going to be really interesting to see where they take that, and how do you translate that real science urgency and the change we need to make then into hopefully better business models so we can actually start to move the needle back from overshooting our carbon goals.
Right. Speaking of that, I know that you guys participate in the carbon offsetting yourself, and obviously, I can't help but wonder why, because you're not a typical, say, huge manufacturing company profile. Can you tell me a little bit more about as to why you guys participate in the voluntary carbon markets?
Yeah, I think the first thing, I mean, as a festival, we like to say we need to walk the talk, So it's not just enough for us to put sustainable startups on stage and have the best speakers talking about
Right.
sustainability. We have to do it ourselves. And of course, you heard about some examples already with the the modular, flexible event space that we have built in the past with Urban Beta. But it goes beyond that. Our exhibition, we where possible, use woods. We reuse them year after year, and this is in terms of our carbon minimization strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, there are unavoidable not offsets, but emissions that you will make as an event manager. And this is something really in the last few years has people are becoming more and more aware of the carbon impact of events. Recently you might have heard it was 2 or 3 years, at the beginning of COVID, Coldplay came out and said, we will not tour until someone can make it happen sustainably. And now they've just started going on tour again with Nesta, which is another company we work with. They make sustainable fuels. All of the truck fuels and plane fuels used for the Coldplay tours are produced by Nesta, which makes e-fuels or, basically synthetic fuels. So I think the key thing for us is with those offsets that we can't minimize, we need to find a way we can actually contribute to decarbonisation elsewhere. So that's obviously the voluntary carbon market. We offset through My Climate, and there's a couple of reasons why we've chosen them. We've been working with them for over 5 years now, and they were one of the earliest ones on the market as well. And the thing that was very important to us is they're actually a not-for-profit organisation. So we were worried always about this issue. You put money into a carbon offsetter, and as you've identified in the past in our discussions, more than 50% can end up going into administration fees, which is actually just pumping out profits at the other end. So that was one reason we chose them. And the other reason is that they we like the transparency in terms of them really showing us what projects we're working with when we start offsetting.
Gotcha. When it comes to the projects themselves, do you typically go for conservation projects, or as other people call it, avoided deforestation credits, or do you look more into reforestation and regeneration?
Yeah, so it's interesting. There's been some changes recently in the way that My Climate designates their different projects, and many of them actually kind of overlap with those different criteria. So it could be social projects that then contribute to protecting forests, so stopping deforestation, or protect ecology as well. So or prevent carbon from entering the atmosphere. So a classic example, this year we've put all of our money into a project in Madagascar, and this project is giving people, local farmers, people in small communities, solar cooking ovens that they can put out and cook their food every day, so they don't need to go into the bush, chop down trees, or even worse still, buy brown coal and burn it to, firstly making themselves sick through sulfur dioxide and nitrous oxides and things like this that are released if they burn those fuels. And they don't have to cut down the forest, which means you're also protecting the forest themselves.
Gotcha. You mentioned one of the, I think, key issues that is on top of everyone's mind when it comes to carbon credits, which is a lack of transparency when it comes to the use of funds, and just overall the fact that it's a new and emerging market. What other deficiencies, I guess if we can call them like that, would bother you as a carbon buyer?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's so many things that are questionable out there. I mean, I think that it's also partly the problem that the market's so new. You know, people aren't deeply educated, even if they're sustainability managers in major organizations. They may not know the difference between things like additionality and true offsets, things like this. You know, or an offset which is just being claimed against an existing piece of land or a tree. I think that until people really start looking at that in detail and understanding that no two carbon projects were born equal, if you know what I mean. And then after that, there's all of the lack of transparency then in the reselling process. But I think the biggest issue right now is on the ground, because we need standardized methods for reporting. We need a global framework for understanding how carbon credits are allocated, how much carbon credits are allocated for different types of offsets. And it needs a lot more granularity, because and this comes back also to my personal experience. I grew up in central Western Queensland, where it's not very fertile soil, not much rainfall, and my dad was a plant physiologist, so this was his world, really understanding soil biomes and things like this. If you have that kind of dry, sandy soil in a desert, and you claim that there's the same amount of carbon offsets, or you're not actually measuring it on the ground compared to, say, a rainforest environment where it can be much more powerful, or mangroves even better on the coast. We need to get to a point where there is that globalized framework. People say we have an equal way, and it's backed by scientific evaluations and measurements to say what a carbon credit's worth on the ground. Because I think often there's a huge gap, and everyone, because it's a market where you can make money, of course they want to be generous in saying that yes, 1 square meter of bushland in Central Australia is worth 20 kilograms per year, which is just a joke if you know what the growing environment's like out there, if you've grown up in that environment.
Right. When I personally look at the markets and I see that they're being governed by private entities, for me that immediately raises the question of can we even trust them? I mean, they do have their methodologies that are about, I guess, like really four of them that are well established, but considering, for example, the recent the recent scandal with the most established of them there, definitely raised the question of can we even trust them overall as a private entity? Do you think there is a need in some type of I guess governmental overreach that should come on top of that private structure?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we know what happens in any type of open market if there's no regulation. It happened. I'm old enough to remember the dot-com crisis of the late 1990s, and my friends were investing in it and lost money, even though they were, teenagers. It was this big pumping thing. There was no regulation. No one knew how to control it. No one knew how to really track on selling or what value is worth. It's the same as the prime mortgage crisis that came out of the 2008. Any financial market unregulated will it's inevitable. It will grow to the point where it takes advantage of itself, and then the trust falls out, and you end up having either a crash or a crisis, and that's where we're at right now. The problem is, in the past, okay, some fund managers lost a whole bunch of money when those crashes happened. Right now we're talking about the future of humanity, so we can't afford. It's not just money we're talking about, and it's even on the more serious side. Back then it was about people's houses or people's living, but now you're talking about really the future of our children and the rest of our lives, and then the future of life on Earth. We need oversight. We need a standardized regulatory framework to make it fair and transparent. Otherwise, I think in the end, it's not going to last much longer. People can keep buying credits and just thinking, okay, I'll push that guilt aside and that's it. We can just forget about it. Yep.
I would say the last question that I have is probably the most challenging, as at least that's how people tend to see it. Between the voluntary carbon markets and actually reducing the emissions, or technology that contributes to emission reduction, all that, what do you think is going to be the most effective in the long run as a carbon credit buyer?
We will need offsets. for the immediate future and for the intermediate future as well, absolutely. But it needs to be robust, and we need to really be able to trust those credits and know that there's a true reduction happening, not a reduction that would have happened anyway, that we're just happening to put a little box around on a map, you know.
Right.
That's one thing that we're not going to get there. It's not realistic to imagine that we're going to get there just by reducing emissions now, although it's a dangerous game, because we need to get to, as fast as possible, we need to be achieving true emission reduction, as in not through offsetting. And if the voluntary carbon market makes it easier for us to delay that process, then we're doing everyone and ourselves a disservice. So we need to. It's in everyone's interest, if we work in the carbon market, or if we're a user of the carbon market like the Greentech Festival. It's in our interest to make sure that this is transparent and as trustworthy as possible, because then it can actually help change the situation. Otherwise, what we're doing basically is just, selling our guilt too cheaply, at under €100 a ton,
Well said.
which is not going to it's not going to solve the problem in the end. But I think that in the end, we need to get to the point where society, as a whole, in itself, is close to carbon neutral as possible.
Right. All right. I'm very excited to have you as a panelist next Tuesday, May 23rd at 4 p.m. Central European Time or 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Dale, please remind everybody when is your upcoming event and how they can get the tickets.
Thanks very much. Yeah, so the festival takes place from the 14th to the 16th of June at Tegel Airport. So we're the first big event taking place at Tegel Airport since it closed. And we'll send you a link to the website so you can get some tickets. It would encourage you to be there. It's a really special event. Everything from lifestyle, fashion, through to Letzte Generation, arguing why we need to stop all business now, will be at the festival. And I think it's something we have to be a part of the conversation to make true change. So I look forward to seeing you there.
All right. Thanks again, Dale. And I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks very much, Ola.